Welcome to Two Bees in a Pod. I am Bilala.
And I am B. Leonga, and this is a podcast about immigrant experiences in the U.S., sharing our perspectives on various topics,
Including straddling cultures, fitting in, staying connected, learning and unlearning the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to this week's episode. We are discussing our June book of the month, which was Under the Udala Trees by Chinelo Okparanta. And we hope you've been reading along with us. And even if you haven't, we hope this discussion will motivate you to go and check out that book. But as usual, we'll start with our icebreaker. And the icebreaker for today is, what is the dumbest sentiment? Is that the way to put it? The dumbest homophobic thing that you've heard or seen?
What is it? Let's see. A man once said, men taking mirror selfies is gay.
I mean, gay men do love mirror selfies, but I know a lot of straight men who... Have you ever been on an online dating app?
They came after my time in the streets.
There's plenty of mirror selfie on the heterosexual. You know what's crazy? That reminds me, I was having a conversation with somebody. I'll not name her, but she lives in the UK, and she was talking about how, like, we were talking about specifically African guys who live in the US and how they love their pictures, like having their picture taken, like when they've dressed up for an occasion or something. And she was like, yeah, that gives me the ick. And she was like, UK guys don't do that. I'm like, listen, here in America, before you enter the wedding venue, all of the bobos are standing outside, and then their girlfriends are...
See, I think I can see that mirror one. I think men and mirrors give me an ick because I used to go out. I used to go hang out with a bunch of guys, and we would go to the club. I don't even see. It's been so long since I've been in the club. Do clubs still have mirrors? Back then, they would have like the wall of mirror.
Of course, it's our mirrors.
They do, or they don't.
They do.
No, because I've seen memes online where it's like, I missed the club in the early 2000s where people actually danced and there was a dance floor. Like, all you have now is sections.
Yeah, I mean, there are sections, but there's still mirrors. Maybe not as...
The mirror was like
much.
right on the dance floor. And these guys would be like, you go to the club with a bunch of guys and girls and you're sitting there like, having your drink, and these ones are in the mirror like, basically, like in the mirror, just why are you looking at yourself like, oh my god, I look so good doing this move right now?
Back when men used to dance, imagine. Now they're just standing in their sections. Their phone is in one hand, their drink is in the other. They're just looking like fucking losers.
Ivorian men don't dance anymore.
I haven't hung out with any Ivorian men, unfortunately, so I can't answer.
Also used to, but yeah.
So the one that I can think of, right, the dumbest homophobic shit that I can think of, back in my Twitter days, somebody said, if you're a man and you ask for a to-go box at the restaurant, it's gay.
Remember, there was a thread of like things that are gay. And it just felt like if you're a man and you breathe, that's gay. Like you have to breathe like a man. Like you can't just...
Fellas, is it gay to breathe? That I died laughing because I'm like, so you not take your lunch for the next day because you're trying not to like look gay? Ask, can I get this to go? Can I get a box? Man, you are suffering. Oh, free yourselves.
You know something else? So my dad has always carried a bag, right? My father has always carried a bag. Before people were talking about mercies or whatever, he has always had a bag where, to me, it's like normal, right? Like if my dad is just like, bring my bag. For the longest time, this man will be minding his business in Douala carrying his bag. And then, like, we went to the market one time and he had his bag and somebody shouted at him like, hey, the bed, not on. Like, hey, old man or father, you're not ashamed, because he was carrying his bag. Listen, he has his keys. The man has a lot of keys. He has his keys, his wallet, like the same things we carry in our purse. He has that in his bag, and it's like you're going to deny yourself the convenience of having a place to put your things
Listen,
because that's gay. Like, carry your
you
purse.
you know what's funny? And I wish Teresa was here so that I could ask her this, because I had this very conversation with a stud who was like, I was like, where's your bag? I mean, I'm not gonna call it a purse because I know you don't like that, but like, she was like, no, like everything goes in her pocket. I'm like, I'm not gonna carry a purse. I'm like, it's not a purse. Like, you can get like a very manly bag and carry it. It's not going to be a purse, and you can put your chapstick, your keys, your phone. You know, obviously, I have a lot more things than she does, but I'm like, what is this stigma against carrying bag?
Technically, if we go back to our culture, right? In Graffiti land, there's a bag because obviously Togo doesn't have pockets, right? Because under it's just
that
two
graphic
pieces.
bag. I know the one you're talking about.
Yes, and they have everything inside.
Crossbody
When they were going to hunt, didn't they put all their things
raffia
inside?
bag.
They were put all their things inside a bag. Now all of a sudden carrying a bag is gay.
Fellas, free yourselves. Anyway, so we've been talking about gay shit the whole month of June, and I know it's July now when this episode is airing, but our book of the month was, again, Under the Udala Trees by Chinelo Okparanta. Quick synopsis is that this novel is set in the 1960s during the Biafran War in Nigeria, and it follows Ijoma, who we meet at, like kind of a preteen. Was she 12?
Yeah, something
Or
like
11?
that.
Yeah. Anyway, a young girl, who is experiencing this war, obviously, with, her family. She loses her father very early on in the book. And due to struggles, her mom sends her off to go and live with a couple who is supposed to be, quote unquote, helping her. Anyway, in that other town, she meets the audiobook that I was listening to kept saying Amina, and it annoys me, but now it's stuck in my head. She meets Amina, a Hausa girl. They fall in love. They don't even know, what is happening to them, but they fall in love. They are discovered, at some point by their Oga. And yeah, that is just the beginning of a very tumultuous experience, right, for our main character. And for Amina also, we don't follow her throughout the novel, but yeah, it's the story of Ijoma and struggling to live with this sexual identity that, her mom says is an abomination. The couple that she's living with, everybody around her calls it an abomination. And that's, so we follow her throughout her life and the decisions that she's making in that identity. So we picked out some questions to discuss. So first of all, we wanted to talk about the war, right? I'm going to let you read this one because I'm not going to try to pronounce that Igbo.
Here's the problem. From what I've learned, Igbo, what they write on paper and what comes out of their mouths, they are not related.
Different.
Whatever I'm going to say is definitely not what it is. I probably should have tried to find out the pronunciation before now. It says is Ubosi Chiji Iyechi, or which translates to the day night fell in the afternoon. And how does it impact the lives of Ijoma and her family? What does her father tell Ijoma about worrying? Why does he stay in the house rather than join his family in the bunker? I really think that this question, especially the last part about why does he stay in the house rather than join his family in the bunker, it speaks to that masculinity, right? Where we are introduced to them, the war has been going on. Like at the start of the war, it said her father was optimistic, but the longer the raids go on and they're running out of food and things are just becoming really dire, I think the way that it was presented is almost like he felt like he could not provide adequate safety and take care of his family. And we know that's a recurring thing about men being able to provide and take care of their family. And so he gave up, which is interesting. Like, you're supposed to take care of your family. Why did you now send them away so that they'll kill you? Who will take care of them when you're gone?
I mean, I definitely got that part right. Like he was overwhelmed. Yeah, but you really make an interesting point when we think about male suicide rates today, right? Like people bring that up often, like how nobody should quote me on this, but I want to say the number one killer of young men under 50 is suicide in the United States. And by the way, June was Mental Health Awareness Month for men's mental health awareness month, which okay,
it needs to be every day.
it really does. But yeah, what was the point that I was making? Yeah, so that how her father Uzo, like he gets so overwhelmed, and yeah, I'm sure that feeling of not being able to protect your family. And we'll talk about grief, but that was part of the reason why Ijeoma's mother was so angry with him.
Yeah.
When he died, which I would be too. I can definitely like see where she was coming from. But what did he tell her about worrying?
It was one of those positive things. I
remember it was some quote that I cannot remember now. Yeah.
It was something to like, worrying doesn't help, or you can only do what you can do, but worrying doesn't necessarily fix things. I hope I'm not wrong.
No, that was the gist of it, but it was a very clever, like, little
adage or saying too, which also made it easier for her to leave him behind.
I did consider that. Okay. So. Yeah. So they're getting, what is it, like raided, right?
Raids.
Yeah. By the Nigerian army. And they have this bunker built, and whenever I guess they hear that the planes are coming, they're supposed to go and hide in the bunker. Which, speaking of bunkers, later on in the book, when Ijeoma is an adult, I thought that was really interesting that bunkers came up again, and I hope I don't forget to talk about it, but I kind of want to move through the book chronologically. But she hides in a bunker for a very different reason as an adult. But yeah, her dad refused to come with them, and he's subsequently killed in the raid. And then the next question, it says, explore the effects of war on those it touches in the book. Who does the war seem to have the greatest impact on? Ultimately, what view of war and conflict or messages about war and conflict does the author offer to her readers?
I mean, from the book, I want to say the war affected everybody differently. There's nobody that it affected more or less than the other. And which, if we tie it to Cameroon currently, some people have lost more than others, but everybody is affected by the war. You think of kids who, albeit that they're innocent, children who are born into a war don't know a life without war. Like children who would have been born with those raids just thought that it was okay to run into the bunker. And then you also have the children who remember a time before that life, and they have to mourn the things that they lost, their childhoods that were gone, because like in Ijeoma's case, 1 minute she was at home with her father and her mother, and she had a really good relationship with her father, and then all it took was one raid and her mom was like completely shattered, their dad was gone, and her whole life was upended. And so there's really no winner in the war except the people who make the weapons and sell them and just
that's right.
But there's really no winner when it comes down to it, because even the soldiers who are fighting that war are traumatized in the things that they've had to do, some for survival. I remember seeing Cameroonian army training in 2019. We ran into these soldiers in Boya on a Friday. We were going to Boya. They were walking. I don't know where I think maybe they started from Limbe, since they have that beer training in Limbe. And so they were walking on that Friday, hot sun, whatever. They're carrying all the equipment. The following week on Thursday, I was going to Yaoundé and I ran into those same people, this time walking towards Douala from Yaoundé. And my first thought is, this thing is so dehumanizing that by the time they're done with training, they will kill anybody, because like, I think that it removes the humanity from them. And so the people who are affected, everybody's affected by war. The parties fighting, the innocent civilians, and the military who have to kill people, and it touches people's lives in different ways. For some people, it's physical loss. For other people, it's deep, like, psychological loss. Something I've heard Nigerians say, for instance, is that parents who grew up during the Biafran War, every now and again when there's agitation in Nigeria, most of them don't build houses where they live. So if they live outside of their home state, particularly maybe in the northern and the western states, they will always build a house first in their village before they build a house outside, because of that trauma of at any moment you never know what could happen and somebody will seize the house from you. And where if there's any agitation in the country, their first instinct is to run back home because that's where they view as a safe place. So, yeah.
And one scene that kind of is memorable for me is when the soldiers are coming to ask Ijoma for water, right? And they have these empty jerry cans and they're obviously starving and dying of thirst. And they have, what, like a borehole or something in their compound? Yeah. They had some source of water. And she takes it to try to get water for them, and her mom flips out and tells them to get lost. And that's another way that war changes people, right? You become so
hard
in trying to survive. Yeah, you become so hard. It's like everybody that is not your immediate family is an enemy trying to take something from you, where you can't even see the humanity in somebody else to just offer them water that you have. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think that's something else, because the war was against tribal lines. You see how Ijeoma's mother is very, very our kind, their kind, because had it been that those soldiers would have been Biafran soldiers, I think her reaction would have been different. And even the way she reacted to Amina, it was very clear that outside of them being gay or doing gay things, outside of that, the same-sex relationship was an abomination. I think she was even more affronted by the fact that it was a Hausa girl. Because at that point in time, it did not matter that this was a child. All Hausas killed her husband, and that's all there is to it. If you're Hausa, you're her enemy. Doesn't matter how old you were.
Yeah, and to give the grammar school teacher and his wife credit, because they had a conversation where they were contemplating taking Amina in, right, when Ijoma kind of brings her home. And they were like, she's Hausa, what if our people come and look for her? They'll kill all of us. But they ultimately decided to keep her, which part of it was selfish reasons, right? They wanted the extra hands to help her around the house. But that was a big concern that they had.
Yeah. Because Ijeoma's mother would not have kept her in her house.
And then the other question says, does the author provide a clear sense of what the warring groups are fighting over? I don't think she did in the novel, which is not necessary for, the story, but I encourage the listeners, if you're not familiar with the Biafran War, go on, I don't know if there are movies, or there is a movie, because they made Half of a Yellow Sun into a movie.
Yeah.
Which the book is still better.
Just read
Maybe that into a movie.
With Chiwetel Ejiofor and Tandiwe Newton.
Yes, but that's one of my favorite books. I mean, if you're just not into reading, I guess you can go watch the movie, but that I highly recommend that. It's a really good book on this war and anyway, let me not spoil it too much, but I recommend.
I'm still waiting for Kainene to come home.
Listen, but that's one thing I love about that book, because that's such a realistic ending, and that's what so many people experienced, right? Yeah. So under the Udala Trees, the author does not really give the reader the background, but like I said, if you're not familiar, you should definitely go and look it up. And Bilola mentioned Cameroon, the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon does have a lot of parallels to the Biafran War in terms of what was being fought about. I have heard that the kind of Amazonian, some of them, right, the leaders, they have some, what is it, like camaraderie? Because in Nigeria, they're still like, what they call them, like small factions of Biafran, I don't know what groups, right? And they have some kind of camaraderie with the Amazonian separatists in Cameroon.
So, kind of, but I want to tread carefully on this one. So I don't get dragged.
I did not say what
So I don't get dragged. So they're like the primary group is called IPOB. And I know that it's one of those that has agitations for, the Biafran struggle. They're not very popular, I would say. But like Cameroon, they also have ghost towns. They call it sit-ins. In the eastern part of the country, which is predominantly in Igbo land, they have mandatory weekly sit-ins, which is like the ghost towns. And if you violate it, the same thing the voices in the bush do is what will come for you. But there's definitely parallels to that in that even like from the start of Cameroon, right? The Cameroon that we have today, Anglophone Cameroon was part of the Southern Cameroon's National Council, SCNC, of which Nnamdi Azikiwe was the leader. And Nnamdi Azikiwe was eventually the first president of Nigeria. You have that camaraderie and that shared history where these two groups of people who ended up in different countries feel like they're being marginalized and so can sympathize with each other's struggles.
Great. Okay, so another theme that we wanted to discuss was grief, right? We've already talked about how Ijeoma's father Uzo basically allowed himself to be killed. He did not run for cover, and he just kind of gave up. And in the book, we see Ijeoma and her mother dealing with grief in very different ways. I felt really bad for Ijeoma because she really missed her dad, but she is scared to talk about him or to say things that will remind her mother of him, at least initially, because her mother is so angry, right? Her mother is in that, I don't know me all the stages of grief, but she's definitely in the angry one, right? Yeah. So I sympathized with both of them because I could understand why the mom was angry, and I could understand how Ijeoma was feeling as well.
Yeah, and I think I looked at it, especially from the perspective of a pubescent girl going through all those changes, hormonal changes, and then dealing with the loss of her father. She could have really used her mother or just somebody to be there and guide her through. And it almost feels like we always talk about adultification of children, where she now had to grow up and try to be the bigger person, trying to walk on eggshells to appease her mother. And then at what feels like a critical part in her growth, her mother, which a lot of parents, right? And what Demi said to us back in December was like, your parents are doing what they think is best for you with the information that they have at the time. And so in her own way, although I would say she was not 100% okay, she was dealing with grief, and she wasn't dealing with grief. She was grieving, but she was not dealing with her grief. And I can understand her not thinking that she could take care of herself and raise her child at the same time. But I think the choice she made in that moment definitely defined the relationship that they had in the future. Because then she felt abandoned. She did not come back to check on her. Just simple. I mean, it almost felt like going to boarding school, right? Your parents, your parents take you to school, and it's like, yeah, I'm doing this. This is a good thing. I'm doing this for your future. But it doesn't always feel that way. And if you ended up being one of the kids that was bullied, that kicks in the abandonment issues because they told you that this was for your own good. It does not feel like it in the moment.
Yeah, and Ijeoma really had a point because, her mother, they lose the dad, right? Her mother is angry, she's grieving. Like you said, Ijeoma basically has to be the adult. At some point, her mom stops cooking. Not that they had a whole lot of food to be cooking, but Ijeoma is now the one trying to figure out, we're going to eat this, we're going to eat that. then the mom makes the decision to send her to go and live with this couple, the grammar school teacher and his wife. That's how they're referred to throughout the novel, which I love that.
They don't.
They don't have names. So she sends Ijoma to go and live with them, and Ijoma is essentially going to be a house girl. She stays in one boys' quarters. It's not even a boys' quarters, it's just a shed in the back of their house. And to her point, her mom did not come and get her until the grammar school teacher caught her and Amina, and then whether sent word or called her mother or communicated to her mother that there was something wrong. And she confronts her mother with that. And her mother was like, no, well, I was going to come and get you anyway, which she doesn't believe her. I don't believe her either. So who knows how long she would have stayed there.
Yeah. And then you just said the thing about the shed now. Considering it was war, and we know how women are treated in war, it's interesting that they chose to leave her outside, where anybody could have come. She wasn't necessarily safe being out in that shed while they stayed inside.
Yeah, and she was bathing like by a tap just out in the open. Yeah, so that was, they were quote unquote helping her, but really, no. Yeah, so that brings us to the next point, right? Which, I don't know, we did talk about this on one of our episodes, maybe the taboo. We talked about quote unquote house girls and house boys, right? So in the story, Ijoma's mother makes this decision supposedly because she can no longer take care of Ijoma in the context of the war. They don't have enough food, blah, blah, blah. She sends her to go and be a house girl to the grammar school teacher and his wife because they can provide for her in exchange for her doing labor for them. That was, in that context, that was in the 60s. People still do that today in Nigeria, in Cameroon, and in other... I'm not going to speak for anywhere outside of Western Central Africa because I don't know, but people, send their children, sometimes quite small children, to go and live with. It could be a close relative, it could be an extended relative, it could be a complete stranger who is going to take your child in, give them, obviously they're giving them shelter, they're giving them food, question mark. Probably not the same quality of food that the children of the house are getting. Maybe, I don't know. They're giving them an education. Again, that one is a question mark. In exchange for being domestic help. And that happens today. I don't know. I don't want to obviously, I'm speaking from a place of privilege, right? I cannot say that the parents are not doing what they think is best for the children. Or sometimes it could be orphans who are living with relatives who just cannot take care of them. So, I don't know, but it's not a good situation for the child, obviously.
I just want to say that don't limit it from the rural areas to urban areas because we have had situations in the Cameroonian community where they brought children, relatives to this country, to the US, to help. They were supposed to be helping take care of them, and they got here and all they used them was for domestic labor. Or like in Nigeria last year where you had a senator who took this boy to the UK because his daughter needed an organ. I can't remember what organ.
I remember.
Yeah. And the irony is that at some point in time he had been a minister of health, maybe, where he could have fixed the hospital. But they took somebody without letting the person know why, so that they could go do an organ transplant. And so and they were supposed to pay the person, but there is a reason why doctors will not transplant if they don't know that you have the right care, you have family support to take care of you, because it's a major surgery. Like your body has to learn to live without. Yes, your body can function without that organ, but it has to learn and adapt before you get back. Were they really going to take care of this person?
They weren't. They were going to dispose of him, probably pay some small money or something. Yeah, I remember that story. It was a scandal.
Like, it happens all the time, and I think in Cameroon now it's even more prevalent because we have internally displaced persons, and people are sending their children everywhere trying to give them the best opportunity, and there are people who are going to be taking advantage. So please, if you're listening to this podcast, and
Mm.
you and your family are one of those, please don't be that person. Don't take advantage of the people's struggles and to free labor, because even like you said, they say, oh, we're going to send the child to school, but far too often when people take these family members from rural areas to help, you will have a child who might be younger than the children in that house. There's definite, like, it's very clear who is a child from the house, who's a child who's not from the house. There's one, like, a younger child is picking up after older children. They are the first to wake up, last to go to sleep. Yes, they go to school, but they're tired. They're working two full-time jobs. They're tired. How are they supposed to learn? And
Yeah.
then just think about also their emotional well-being, because surely they're not blind. They can see the difference in how you treat them.
Yeah. And it's not even just like, I've said this thing, Cameroon is extremely classist. I've seen the way people speak to their domestic staff, adults and children alike. It's even worse for the children. You want to do one somebody slap. Imagine, like, and that's a child at the end of the day. Everybody makes, even adults make mistakes. So think about a child that's trying to be a housekeeper. Of course they're gonna mess up.
That's
So
the most interesting thing. I remember reading an article by a Nigerian author, I think Lola Shanae, where she was talking about house help and like the way house helps are treated in Nigeria, her home country. And I remember being so scandalized, and I sent to my friend, and she's like, but it happens in Cameroon too. I grew up in a house where it was very clear. My mother said we are never allowed to say that's my house girl. She don't work for you. Nobody works for you. So you don't get to sit with your friends and say and to this day I'm like, the lady who helps my mom at home. My mother's help. It's not mine. And then in Bali, for instance, we don't call our elders by name. So everybody who came into the house, if it's an older female, you call her ma. If it's an older male, you call Ni. There no boards at any point in time were you going to disrespect somebody because they were working in the house. They were gonna light you up.
but yeah, I mean, if you want to help a child, help a child. I'm not saying that they shouldn't like do chores around the house, but
No,
I mean,
let it be equitable. Like, you should not have
yeah,
a younger child cleaning shoes for your older kids, or cooking for
ew,
them,
yeah,
or
no,
washing their clothes. Like, why that?
yeah, and honestly, that it's not like these people cannot afford to pay adult domestic staff. They can. You just take
I've
advantage.
ranted about this one before, but something that I learned on Twitter is people take their help, they take their babysitter, their kids' nannies to go out to eat.
Yeah,
Don't
we
want to
talked about
buy them
this.
food.
That is atrocious. That is really atrocious behavior. My goodness.
Like, do you cannot take care of your own kids so much that you cannot handle them for 2 hours for a meal. So you need to bring somebody to watch them, but you don't want to feed them. Leave them at home.
Exactly. Exactly. And I have to go off on a tangent because this is not regarding children, but people who bring older women to the US to be nannies. I heard some of the quote unquote salaries that people are paying these your nannies. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like that thing shocked me.
Please give me a rate.
A living nanny, $1,000. Okay, this I overheard a conversation. Why are you making your face? Overheard a conversation. The conversation was like, this person is looking for, blah blah
And that,
blah, a nanny. This is living. It's 24/7. $1,000 a month. Wow, that is so good. So the impression I got was that that's above market
I'm doing
because
it.
the
So
person
my
was saying it with such.
daycare is what, at least when we were paying for daycare, it was 8 to 3. It was 8 to 3, and 10 years ago we were paying a little over 1,000 for 8 hours. But a full-time nanny, now it depends. Like, if you have little kids and you have a full-time nanny round the clock. $8,000. Come on now, that's $250 a week. How many hours are they working?
It's
40
not
hours.
40 hours. It's not. That's the thing. It's not a 40-hour job. You pay somebody $250 a week and it's 7 days a week. Because where's she going? You're staying with her.
Church.
I mean, she's time.
She goes to church on Sundays. But yeah, I know that life is hard and we're all looking for a steal. But let's be for real.
And I'm saying the conversation that I heard, the person was talking like that is an above market rate, like that employer was being generous. So I'm like, what is the average person making?
You know what? I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. Then very soon they'll be surprised that their child, speaks with the nanny's accent, or they cannot read because they've been watching their nanny's telenovelas with them. You people should be for real, man. Like,
I mean, no, the listeners should check me. Check me. I don't have children. I don't know anything about childcare costs. So if I am really talking out the side of my neck, please let me know. But for somebody to live in your house, and they're not just doing childcare, right? They're cooking and cleaning, maybe with the madam of the house, but they're not just sitting and watching that baby. They're doing other things.
And some people want to shout at them.
So, I mean, I really want the listeners to weigh in on this one because to me, that was atrocious, but maybe I'm looking at it from a completely unrealistic lens. Okay, let's get back to our novel. Ijeoma's mother is called to the grammar school teacher's house because he has walked in on Ijeoma and Amina.
Why did he knock?
That's a very good question. And what was he doing? It was in the night. What was he coming to look for?
No, so they said usually he would bring his clothes for them to wash at some point during the day. But he knocked. They said he always knocked. That was the first day. He did not knock.
Maybe he heard some sounds.
I mean, he was caught unawares. Go ahead.
Anyway, he is, scandalized and he calls, sends for Ijeoma's mother to come, and they're talking about, this is an abomination. So Ijeoma's mother takes her back and they leave Amina with the teacher and his wife, and Ijeoma's mother now goes into this, I don't know what is it, what they call those things that people go to at the end of the year when they're praying for a husband. Shiloh. Is it
night vigil?
Yes. Whatever. Those things Ijeoma's mother is attempting to do in their house because she's making her read the Bible like every day, and she's essentially trying to pray the gay away, which is something that people are still thinking they can do in 2024. I hate to break it to you, my brothers and sisters in Christ. It simply does not work that way.
You are who you are, I think what I enjoyed most about the prayers was the author Chinelo's choice of Bible verses. I really enjoyed because she used a favorite one of mine. I think it's from Leviticus or Numbers. One of those where it says you should not wear mixed fabrics. Yes. And you shouldn't eat an animal. It was like one of those ones that I always use whenever people say it's in the Bible, and I point like, I know you're not saying that with your little Shein rayon outfits, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't do that. Yeah. But she had really interesting passages. And then I liked when she brought up the story of Lot and his daughters, and like where instead of when they found out that Lot had guests and the men of Sodom and Gomorrah came and he gave his daughters instead. There were two times where the man gave the woman up, and Ijeoma asked valid questions like, why would you do that? Like, you don't love. I think that first of all, she was a teenager. I would be afraid. Like, which kind of Jesus Bible, like, why would you do that? Like, my father is supposed to protect me. Like, there's nothing about that verse that would make me want to keep reading that book. And you're telling me, which she asked her mother, like, why would he do that? Shouldn't he be there to protect his daughters? Why would you give your daughters instead of your guests? But I guess that's boy math.
So one of my favorite Bible scholars, he actually talks about that story because Christians love to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah and oh, they were, destroyed with fire and brimstone because they were gay. That's actually not the point of that story. The point of the story is that, according to, this Bible scholar, is that the angels, right, comes to Lot's house and the men of the town are like,
We want them.
bring him out, bring him out. But he's saying that it's not like it was a sexual, like they were horny. It was more of a dominance thing, right? Like they want to dominate these strangers. And of course, in that story, as with in most of the Bible, women are like NPCs. They're like disposable, characters. So the author of that story was actually trying to demonstrate that Lot was a really good person because he was protecting the strangers who came to him, and he offered, his daughters, because the person who wrote that story, again,
Lived
women
at
are
that time.
disposable. Yeah. So again, this Bible scholar is saying that Sodom and Gomorrah was not destroyed because they were gay. They were destroyed because they were not welcoming and they were violent towards strangers who came to their town. It's not the gay part. It's not the gay part. It's wanting to be violent and not, hospitable to strangers who are coming to you. But yeah, that other story, the Judges 19, that one is even more violent. The Judges 19, yes, I'm not going to repeat it, but if you get Belego and, read it, like, and again, it's like, the point of the story is not what we think is the point of the story, because we're not looking at it from the perspective of the patriarchs who wrote those stories. Anyway, Ijeoman's mother is basically hitting her over the head with the Bible, hoping that it will knock out the gay.
Bible plus holy water and anointing oil every night. Like I said, I just feel like being a teenager in war is really hard enough. Now you come and add personal turmoil. Like, she spent a lot of time in church. Remember the day? Bruh. Yeah, no, that her mother tried though. That faith that she had.
And it also goes to this thing where Christianity is very fear-based, right? Because as much as Ijeoma was challenging her mother with those Bible verses, it very much terrorized her to a point where she used to have dreams, right? Like she was afraid that she would be, what's the word, right? Because of who she was, like this idea of going to hell, you're, like you said, an abomination. That's something that it traumatizes even non-gay children. Children who are raised in the
super
kind of
ultra religious.
Yeah.
Because I just remember, so the Nigerian author El Nathan Jonathan, have you ever read his work? So El Nathan shared that he grew up, I believe, is Jehovah's Witness, and they would always talk about things that will happen to people who disobey, and his particular crime was masturbation. And it was like, if you go against the word, like, bad things will happen to you. It gave him so much anxiety. He spent a lot of his teenage years at home afraid to go out, because he was afraid that, because like this thing that he's doing, that, almost kind of like, I can't stop doing it, but if I go out, something will happen, so I'm just going to stay home. And when he eventually left, like, he doesn't have the best relationship with his family, because that's one of those religions where when you leave, it's frowned upon to maintain a relationship with you. But it's just like, as a parent, I think that my first responsibility is to make sure that I am raising a wholesome, healthy child. They're protecting the child is like that's my responsibility, right? As somebody said, children did not ask to be born. You did what you did and you made the child. The child never asked to be here. Only one person made a choice. And so you owe it to the child to take care of them. And that's what I struggle with, like in ultra religious, conservative type of households where knowingly or unknowingly, but you're traumatizing this child for no reason.
But you have to remember that the parents themselves are also brainwashed, right?
True.
Because they're
True.
saving you from hellfire in their mind. Okay. Ijoma, when her mom takes her away from the grammar school teacher, at some point later, she goes to boarding school where she runs into the love of her life again, Amina. And, Amina is really trying to stay away from this girl. She's like, bruh.
I don't know
Like,
you.
she said, I was about to quote R. Kelly. I'm not going to do that. I was going to say her mind was telling her no, but it was telling her yes. Anyway, they rekindle.
For a little bit.
their...
For a little bit.
Yeah. And then, is it a graduation? When they're leaving the school or something, at some point.
It's when they're graduating and Ijoma's mother comes and the school teacher and his wife are like, they have good news that Amina is getting married, and Ijoma's mother's first question is, where is he from? Or like, to her kind.
Yep. She was so happy that Amina was marrying a northerner too. She was like, yes, that's the way it's supposed to be.
I feel like that's the first time she actually spoke to Amina like a person. And like the way that it's described is the first time she like softened towards her, because one, she was getting married to a man, two, it was a northern man, and they were going to move. They said yes, it would be good for her to be among her people. So she was taking her completely away, so she was not going to corrupt her own daughter. So yeah, it was all self-serving, but
yeah. And of course Ijoma is heartbroken, right? Like that again, that's the love of her life.
You know how your first heartbreak.
See,
you know how you feel like your chest, you'll be having chest pain, you think it's a stroke.
You're sick.
It's a broken heart. Like you feel like that.
No, I'm really laughing, but yeah, so Ijoma, she's devastated, as anyone would be, right? So she goes and she's working with her mom in her mom's shop, and her mom is, nagging her every freaking day. A woman is not a woman without a husband. Some bullshit, that people still say today. Oh, that book, it was really, what was the word? Amusing in a kind of way, because I'm like, this is in the 60s and 70s, and people are still saying this nonsense in 2024.
Yeah.
Anyway, her mom every day singing in her ear. Have you seen that video? When will you marry? Is it this year? Is it next year? When will you marry? Her mom is singing that in her ear every day. In childhood, I don't even say he was her sweetheart, because she didn't like him in that way, but he liked her, right?
Yeah. I think because she described the thing where they were watching the boys play, and she was the only one. He was the only one she called by name.
Yeah, and he like gave her first kiss, even though she didn't really want to kiss him. Yeah. Anyway, he shows up. He's a grown man now. He has an education. He has this good job, and her mom is like, "Girl, you better not let that fish swim away." And ultimately, he, proposes to her. In the meantime that all of this is happening, Ijoma has met Didi, right?
Didi, yeah.
Yeah. Who is a woman that she starts this relationship with, and they start going to a gay
Bible
party,
study.
which, listen, it's happening in a church. They're clandestine, gay meetups are happening in a church, and that's where they have the bunker where they can run to, in case, because people were aware, right? Like the mob.
Yes, they said they had one that was in an abandoned church, and they found out and they had burned that down. Thankfully, no one was there. But the one they were using was like a real church. No, so this is actually something. There were parts when she was describing this Bible study gay party that it felt too recent, because I kept thinking, like, what year is this supposed to be set in? The music, I got hung up on like the music, like where are they playing this? No Spotify.
Was it? Hold on. So was it late 70s by then?
It should have been sometime in the 70s,
right? Yeah.
But it didn't to me. I was not there in the 70s, but I don't know why. I was just like,
You're imagining like a modern.
Maybe, you know what? It was probably the way that I was visualizing it, that made it seem unreal. But it was just the way she described the music and them having. I was fixated on like, was the electricity that good? Also, how were they playing these mixtapes? Because back then it was like one cassette from one artist. Was it even
They didn't even
cassettes?
have cassette. They had that listen
So the way she was
gramophone.
describing it just gave like they were changing, songs. I was really hung up on the details. Sorry, but
Anyway, they they get one night they come under attack, right? And they hide in this bunker, but one of the girls didn't make it in time, and she gets attacked and killed.
burned alive.
Yeah, burned by the mob. And to be honest, that kind of drove Ijoma towards her decision, right, to accept
Yes.
Chibundo's proposal.
Yeah. I think that is what really made her afraid. Just the fear of that happening and having witness. Because they did see her when they got out of the bunker, right? The girl who was killed, who had a crush on Didi actually. And so, yes, that definitely instilled the fear of God in her.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Chibundo came around, she was a little hesitant, but I think because she had witnessed that, she became afraid, and for whatever reason, Didi also encouraged her.
Yeah, and I think Didi did that out of, again, she was also afraid, right? Obviously, she cares about Ijoma, and Ijoma took the stance of, well, maybe I can just figure this shit out and somehow it will work. And I think she was a little bit more naive than Didi, but Didi also was so afraid for their lives, and she really wanted the best for Ijoma. So she was like, you know what? If there's a chance that somehow you'll be happy with this man, then at least you'll be safe. So yeah, Ijoma accepts his proposal, and they get married, and I don't even want to say to his credit because, of course, you should
see.
It's not to his credit because he's patient. He's more patient with her than I would have imagined. Right? She doesn't want to sleep with him on the first night. Obviously, she's not sexually attracted to him. He's kind of being, quote unquote, patient. But again, I don't want to. Yeah, but they eventually do. She gets pregnant. She's still in love with Didi.
She falls pregnant.
And then she's still in love with Didi, and she is writing letters. Which she seems to be saving most of them and not mailing them, right? She only mailed a couple.
I think she mailed maybe the first handful of them. When she didn't hear anything back, she kept writing, but she wasn't mailing them because she said there was no point since Didi was not writing back.
Mm-hmm. And we later on come to discover that Didi was in fact writing back, and Chibundo had he says it was by mistake that he intercepted the first letter. He kind of opened it by mistake from Didi, and then from then on he started being on the lookout. So he would this man was determined. He would go on his lunch break to the post office to check the mail because he knew that Ijoma would check it later in the day. So he was getting all the letters and Didi. Chibundo, like, again, I don't want to give him credit, but he really believed that, listen, I know that you're gay, but we can make this thing work if we just decide. He was so determined. Like, I really want to know. I wonder if the author had if she's into astrology, if she was imagining what astrological sign he was, because he's giving either Scorpio or Capricorn energy. Because how are you that determined?
We need a short story, a la Chibundo's POV.
Listen,
no, because and I guess I struggled with wanting to give him credit. And I kept saying the bar is really in hell for men because
hell.
But considering the times they lived in, he could very well have been violent towards her and nobody would have bat an eyelash.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of ways he could have reacted. He could have given her up or told people, even without doing it, and the reaction of, the mob or the people would have probably been very negative. As much as I struggle with, like, why am I think he was written in, it made you sympathetic. Like, I wished they had been in different circumstances, but she was who she was. And she tried to make it work for as long as she did until she could not do it. But I felt bad for him because they did say that he ended up, like he never remarried or anything. I wish he had gone out there and found somebody for himself, because he did try to make it work. Minus that time when he was pressuring her that they should have a boy. Like, I was I was extremely upset when he bought the car and it's like, oh, it's for your brother. And he would rather play with the neighbor's kid who was a boy than with his own daughter. But then he did come around after that. But even then, by then, she didn't want to touch it anymore.
Yeah. And he became resentful, right? He became very resentful. And I think part of that
was when he found, when he first found, because they talk about when they started fighting, and I think maybe that's when he found the first letter, but he did not talk about it, and so they just started fighting endlessly. And I think that's also when she gave up and decided to go ahead and consummate the marriage and eventually fall pregnant.
Yeah, and they had a conversation. So Chibundo, like, he was not really a religious person. They had a conversation where he basically said, like, I don't see same-sex love as to be an abomination, as people are saying. Like, I don't really care about that shit, is what he was telling her. The way he approached it, in a way that he was like approaching in a practical manner. Like,
yeah,
like we can be. I think, I don't know if it's an exact quote, but I remember him saying something to the effect of, "Happiness is a matter of determination." Like, it's okay. Like, you're not attracted to me. We can just make this work and be happy if we decide that we're gonna be happy. I mean, that is can be applied to certain things in life, obviously, but he was pushing it with this one. But he kept insisting, like, and they said even after she left him, right, like, he would still, like, set up family meetings to try to, and again, to his credit, he never outed her as a lesbian. He never said the reason why. Obviously her mother knew, but he never told anybody, and he could have easily been vindictive.
Yeah.
And outed her.
Considering she left him and went back to Didi, and they essentially co-parented their daughter Chidima. It was very, like, I felt for him when he found the letters, because I think he really liked her and he had always liked her. And
she too was reading those letters. She too was doing those letters when she was pregnant. She was saying that, oh, I wish it was you and I that were raising this baby instead of Chibundo. Listen, he had a reason to be upset. She was doing it in those letters. He definitely,
he tried. I wish maybe they could have just been like, he could have been her beard, but I think because he really liked her and he had probably always liked her from when they were little.
Yeah.
It was harder for him to walk away or move on.
Yeah. She was the love of his life. And I keep saying, like, he was really giving me Capricorn energy because he had this idea of what he wanted his life to look like. And he was like, these are the steps I'm going to take to get this life that I want. And you are just, you have to play your role to paint this picture. And even the thing like buying the toy car, he was like, okay, I'm going to buy this toy car and, for my son, because, he was he thought, those people who think that there's a formula to everything, like, there's a recipe, there's a formula to life. Like, if you just do this, this, and this, you'll get this result. And he was one of those people. Yeah. I did feel bad for him.
I felt bad for him, but I also liked how when she came back from Chibundo with Chidinma, and her mother at that point was just like, you know what, I give up. Yeah. So I did love that she eventually came around and had a better relationship with her mother.
Yes, I was happy to see that, and even in the was it epilogue?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the epilogue when they're talking about like gay people being attacked, and her mom is reading the paper, and she makes a comment saying like, why would people do that? And yeah, so it's kind of showing like she accepted her.
Eventually, like, she's the book says they never lived together. Like, they raised the kid together and they were together, but it still was not safe. So they had their own separate places, but by and large, and she lived, I think, in the same compound with her mother. And so they definitely had their own family unit going, but there was no pretty gay way after that. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed it the first time I read it, when it just came out, but that's also, I had no idea what it was going to be about. And I would say, the first time I read it, I was still in my homophobia light era.
We thank God for it.
But I enjoyed it, and I don't know if I would say that that might be one of the parts when I started like, hey, it was like very little, but I was just so fascinated by a book about, same sex love relationships set in the African context, because it wasn't anything that I'd ever seen before. And so then and now it's still something that's a theme that sits with me. And then reading it and thinking about the Biafran War and the parallels to the Cameroon conflict currently is just, it's like bittersweet, right?
Yeah, agreed. I really love the book. And I know that I say that I like heart-wrenching sad books, and this book was sad for a lot of it, but it did have a good ending, right? It did have it. Well, I don't know. We don't know anything else about Amina, but
yeah, I wanted to know what happened to her. But it looks like she went to the north and just like disappeared.
Yeah, it kind of, I guess if we look at the three women, right, in the story, so Amina kind of concedes and she's like, I can't fight this system. This is what I have to do. I'm going to do it. And she made that decision from a young age, and she really wasn't, even after they got caught, like, she was very apologetic. When they were in boarding school, she was really trying not to, like,
don't bring that thing.
She was like, girl, leave me alone, girl, stop tempting me, so she made that decision from a young age that she just, was not going to, and yeah, who would blame her, right? So that she took one path. Ijoma took another path where she resisted, but eventually was like, let me see. And then she found out that she, in fact, could not. And then Didi, who they don't really tell us, but I assume she was single the whole time. And she would just, like, this is who I'm going to be.
I think Didi was also older because she was teaching when we are introduced to her. So I think she'd probably gone through her own internal turmoil, but by the time we meet her, she seems to be comfortable in who she is.
Very much so. Not that she's not aware of the danger. She's very aware. She's just willing to, and she may not have had the same family pressure, or she may just have decided that she's okay being, ostracized or whatever it was. But, the path of, definitely not the path of least resistance. That's for sure. Okay. So, in the book and at the end of the book, they talk about the criminalization of homosexuality, right? In the 60s, 70s, 80s, when this book is set, being gay was a criminal. Well, let me not say being gay, but same-sex sexual acts were criminal in Nigeria. They are also criminal currently in 67 countries, including our dear fatherland, Cameroon, where it is punishable up to 10 years in prison. In Nigeria, there's a range of punishment, but it includes the death penalty if you find yourself in the north. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's what it is, right? Because they're subject to Islamic Sharia law. And then Ghana also has laws criminalizing, which their politicians have been bringing that shit up in the media in the last, few years. But yeah, there are laws criminalizing homosexuality in Ghana, as well as many, many other, African countries and countries around the world, unfortunately. Speaking of Cameroon, so for our listeners who maybe not Cameroonian or even Cameroonian and you're just not clued into like what would it be? Current events?
What is it? You're not chronically online.
Pop culture, yes. You're not clued into pop culture and you don't follow the Cameroonian blogs. Our first daughter, Brenda Bia, she it was Instagram, right, that she made the post on?
Yeah.
What platform was it? Instagram?
It was Instagram,
She posted her girlfriend basically officially coming out, which there have been rumors that
it wasn't rumors.
she's gay.
She had been posting before. She's been posting for a while now. But this was the first time she came out and said, yes, I am a gay.
Okay.
Why are you gay?
I saw that meme in the comments. The comment section, of course, was disgusting. I'm not going to name the blog site that I saw it on because they're extremely problematic, even though they do share useful information. Like they share all kinds of things, right? They share gossip, they share political news, especially in light of the Anglophone crisis. They were really good about sharing incidents that were happening and communications from the government and things like that. But they also share a lot of harmful I know you know the site that I'm talking about, and
of course I know.
I don't want to name them, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. Listen, that they posted, there was a story a couple of years ago where a teenager, this person was a minor, was discovered to be having a sexual relationship with an older person, so a boy and an older man, right? Clearly not a completely consensual relationship, just in terms of the age difference and power dynamic. They posted his uniform with his name on it. I said, what is wrong with you people? And they have also posted, that same site, they have posted videos of minors having sex in their classroom.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys, like, so I can't stand them for that. Like, they literally have no discretion. They do anything for views. So the only time you'll see them moderating is because they're scared that Instagram is going to take down their posts, but they're extremely...
They have a Telegram channel and you should see the things, what they post.
I cannot even imagine.
What they post on Instagram is quite light, but you really went off on a tangent.
I did go off on a tangent and I'm so sorry, but I think... And I don't follow other Cameroonian blog sites. Maybe they're not the only ones doing this. But, like, again, they post information about minors that is very harmful. I know that in Cameroon, maybe in Cameroon media law, we don't have those laws.
Yeah,
or we don't enforce laws that... But it's like, you cannot be posting, like that kind of information about minors. They have posted videos of domestic violence, like, a man literally dragging his partner by the hair, and the comments are not any better. So no. I really have big beef with that blog site. They need to do better. They did one post that she made.
I saw it on the Francophone side.
Okay.
So they're a little bit better in that people were like, okay, since they have been arresting people, there was somebody, I can't remember his name, Shakiro, there was a Shakiro, and they had arrested the person, so they're like, okay, it's fine and dandy. So I don't think it doesn't do much. It's not going to change, shift the needle. Because first of all, this is the same girl who had attacked her mother with a knife when she lived in LA. And they said it was drugs, and they took her out of the country using diplomatic immunity because I think whatever city or maybe the state of California was going to persecute her, knife, my guy. And so they took her out of the US and I think they pulled her out. She was supposed to be at INAM, which is the school where they train our administrators and judges and magistrates. But I don't think she ever went to class. She just took somebody's space because she's been in Switzerland. She flies private. It's not going to do anything. It would be nice if she was doing something. Her father, we are cursed with her father, cursed with her. We don't even, the father might be bad, but We don't even have a head of state who has partially useful children to society. Because what does she do?
That's the thing. Like, of course, nobody should receive hate and homophobia, right? I don't, you
I
know,
don't have any feelings towards.
I don't have feelings toward, because people are making, apart from the, overwhelming homophobic trash that's in those comments, but there are people there who are making valid points, like what you said. Your father is the president of the country that criminalizes homosexuality, right? Other queer people, whether it is, femme presenting men or even people who are caught having same-sex relations, they are brutalized by the police. Some of them are jailed. You are here. Okay, tell us now, your daddy must make an example of you, right? Is he going to? No. And then to your point, double standard. And then somebody else in their comments said she's using our money to spoil her girlfriend. And it's true.
Yes.
That's our money.
Yes. She
That
never
you're
worked
using
it
to
in.
taking your babe out on dates with our money.
Can you imagine? I think you sent me the thing where it says, while her father is showing us Pepe, she's showing her father Pepe. So, citizens
Listen,
of her father
citizens up on.
her father ain't even lucid enough to see any Pepe. And as she has shown, she took knife to her mother. So right now, I don't know that there's anybody who can control her. It is what it is.
I think, again, to your point, he probably doesn't even know what's going on in his immediate surroundings, much less what his daughter is doing abroad. But I feel like if it's a surprise to us, I don't think it's a surprise to the family. They've been new.
She's been out. I said she's been posting this girl. Supposedly, I don't know where I saw it. The girl is maybe a plastic surgeon or does like, remember when Tiny went to go dye some part of her eye blue and he failed? Supposedly that's what that girl does. Like because Brenda tried to do it and he failed. I don't know, I saw it somewhere, somebody's gossip. It don't even matter. Like, I don't think that it's her coming out does nothing for the average gay person in Cameroon.
It doesn't.
Try it whether they will not go and lock you up. So it doesn't move the needle. It's just, okay, what has Brenda done today? Because I found out she's a rapper now. I didn't know that. Her stage name is King Nasty from Brenda Anastasia Iyenga. She has taken. Oh God. Period.
Drop the mixtape, babe. Well, let's see.
But yeah, okay, I'm done.
Okay. Well, I would definitely, we want to hear your phobic thoughts, of course. They are not welcome here, but we want to hear intelligent, amusing, insightful,
You know what we should have had today? We should have had confetti to celebrate, but we can get it. Wait, how do you do confetti in this thing? Is it this? We should have had confetti to celebrate the end of Pride Month because, we've had decent Pride programming, and we want everybody to stay colorful and gay for the rest of the year.
Stay gay. Yeah, and I hope the listeners, gay or not, I hope you guys appreciated the discussions that we had on here. And yeah, everybody harbors some kind of homophobic sentiment, right? Even gay people, because of the society that we live in. But if you are somebody who is like Ijoma's mother in the beginning of the book, we hope that you will also experience a similar transformation and become more open-minded and accepting, because somebody that you love is gay. I guarantee that. I guarantee you. All right. July book of the month. I want us to read Travelers by Helen Habila, and I want us to read that book because it talks about immigration, not in the US, but in Europe. And we have a really good episode coming up in July talking about immigration. So I thought that it would be apt for us to read that.
Is it one of those your like pain and suffering books?
Small, yeah, it's a little bit, yeah. It's not too bad though. It's not too bad.
I'll trust you.
But yeah, but it's I found it interesting because I don't know anything about how immigrants go through the system in Europe. So I thought when I read it the first time, I thought it was interesting to see that, because we talk a lot about the immigration experience in the US, but Europe, obviously, they got their own thing going on. So that's Travelers by Helon Habila. He's one of my favorite authors. This book is not my favorite of his, but he's one of my favorites. Okay. You can follow us on YouTube at 2Bs in a Pod. We post full video episodes as well as shorts. And you can follow us on Instagram at 2Bs Pod. Subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening. Follow us on all the things. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And until next time.
Ground beef no fit dig hole for water, which means groundhog cannot dig a hole in the water.
Is ground beef groundhog? We talked about this before. We had another ground beef quote.
Please. I don't want to start.
Is it groundhog or mole?
Is it rat mole? Is mole?
Is rat... Listen, we need to have what they call them. We need a mammologist to come on this show because a rat mole cannot dig a hole in the water, which I don't know. That it's like Ijoma who was trying to have a relationship with a man. If it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work.
So it's like you can't put a round peg in a square hole.
Yes, that's my interpretation. Right? Like you just cannot make something work in a place that is not for you. Right? Like you can't. A crab can dig a hole in the water. A ground beef cannot.
Okay.
Make sense?
I have confetti, by the way. My production assistant brought me confetti.
Yes. Let's see it.
So, happy Pride Month! Yeah!
Happy Pride!